2025 was the busiest year that we have ever had on the farm. We were moving full speed towards the farm that we had always dreamed of. We were going to build the barn, finally finish the tool shed, and this year the winter hay was supposed to be a sure thing as we had spent months improving our fields, or so we thought. But life isn't just something that you plan, it also happens. Norwegian nature is not for the faint of heart. Flooding, heavy rain, wind and snow all tested us, but hardest of them all are moments when life ends. This is the story of our life on a remote, abandoned farm from July to December 2025. Hi, my name is Eric. Some years ago, my wife Marianne and I left our 9-to-5 lives to live on an old abandoned farm on the west coast of Norway. Our dream was to connect to nature, to grow our own food and to give our 2 kids a life away from the constant stress of the concrete jungle. Now, that doesn't mean that this choice was easy. I won't lie. Sometimes, when it feels like we are fighting nature itself, I miss the simple apartment life, where our biggest concern was what to make for dinner the next day. But then, there are moments when it turns, when nature shows itself from its most beautiful side, and in those moments it all feels worth it. This is Norwegian farm life. During the first half of the year we started building a tool shed. Up until now we have been running the farm out of our basement. I was so tired of the constant mess and the fact that I could never find any of my tools. I was really looking forward to finally getting this building done, and since we were still waiting for the floor plates for the barn, it felt like the perfect time to focus on the shed. The floor plates for the barn finally arrived, but they would have to wait. The grass was ready for harvest and we had a 3-day weather window. It rains a lot on the west coast of Norway, so chances like this don't come often. We had no choice but to get started. This year we were lucky. The people who normally harvest my neighbor's field didn't need the grass, so we were able to cut his fields as well. That would have been impossible for me to do alone if it weren't for one of the tools that we have bought last year, a hay turner for the tractor. By day 2, our main field were already dried. All the work that we had done with drainage and replanting really paid off. The ground was less damp and the grass dried faster. It always feels good when some of the hay is safely inside. It's like having food in the pantry or money in the bank. So far, everything was going well. Day 3 was the dreaded one. The rest of the hay was dry, but dark clouds were gathering in the sky. If rain hit that hay now, it would be ruined, and all the hard work would have been for nothing. Stress levels were high. While I was working for dear life under the blistering sun, I suddenly saw a flock of cows in our field. Although we are new farmers, I'm pretty sure I would have remembered if we had bought cows. And these were definitely not ours. This was the last thing I needed, so I told Marianne that I cannot deal with this right now. She would have to find the owners, and that's exactly what she did. As everything drew near, every muscle in my body ached. I had been working from sunrise to sunset for 3 days straight, in unusually high temperatures, and exhaustion was starting to creep in. For the first time that summer, I caught myself thinking, is this really what I wanted? At the same time, I could feel droplets in the air. The race was truly on. A few days later, I inspected the hay in the second field that we had replanted earlier that year. It had been rained on for several days, and the hay was completely ruined. It was a sad sight, but there was a silver lining. Because of the extra fields, our hay storage was already filled to the brim. We wouldn't have had room for this hay anyway. Next year, when the barn is hopefully finished, we would have more space. But one thing was clear. I couldn't continue making hay this manually. If we were going to keep going, better tools would be necessary. Now we had to hurry to lay the floor so that the builders could return and move on to the next step of the barn frame. I was still hoping that I could get the building waterproof before winter. The only problem was my crippling fear of heights. I hated to work on ledges and at high elevations. My stomach dropped, I got vertigo, but this had to be done. We didn't have money to pay for professionals, so I would have to push through and start. Laying the floor was hot and exhausting work. Horsefly attacked constantly, and the summer was unusually hot for Norway, with temperatures above 30 degrees Celsius even in the shade. The conditions were unforgiving. We had to take a break when a shipment arrived. Sheep can be calm, gentle and pleasant, but I can also be mischievous and destructive. Our ram Knut was firmly in the second category. After breaking gates, destroying fences and even denting our new car, we had enough. We had tried several times to send him off the farm, but every time he did what he did best. Jumped the fence and ran away. He would not, however, jump these fence panels. I had made an arrangement with my neighbor to set up a temporary pen on his field next to the road, so Knut could be picked up there. With that finally done, we could get back to work. Finishing the floor felt incredible. So many times I've stood by those old stone walls and imagined walking over them, and now I finally could. I took a picture and sent it to the builders. Horseflies are a real menace during the summer. Because our land is wet and marshy, they thrive here. They bother the animals, but worst of all, they target our daughter. Because of her condition, she becomes an easy victim, and that is simply not acceptable. So we bought a horsefly trap. As I am a man and apparently don't need instructions, I didn't read that I was supposed to add soapy water. The result was a trap full of very much alive horseflies. While we waited for the builders to return, I continued working on the tool shed. We desperately needed more storage space. Once we finally had a roof over the building, I couldn't wait any longer. I was so tired of stumbling over tools that I started moving into the unfinished shed. Since we still hadn't heard when the next building step on the barn would happen, I decided to continue building the wall on the shed. That way, the tools I've just moved in wouldn't get wet if rain and wind came. So now the wall is up and I am happy about that, but for now we need to leave this building because I just got a phone call and the builder is on his way. The plan for the day was to lay the floor beams for the next story. The builders wanted the floor in place to make the next step safer and easier. So the beams are ready and that means that we can start to lay the floor. But before we start that job, it's going to rain tomorrow and I don't want to leave our new wall unprotected. The first story floor had already been scary enough, this next step would be truly terrifying. I had to work mentally with myself for quite some time before I dared step onto the second level. Why did we build it so high? Kept running through my mind. But this is how the old barn had originally been built, and now it was done. There was nothing left to do but to try. So it's a new day and we have been out shopping. So since we don't have a Knut anymore, we could also buy a new mineral stone. Now this is still full of poop, so I think we need to clean it a bit. The floor was finished and that was a huge relief. At least for a while, we wouldn't have to go back out there. Now we just needed to let the builders know that we were ready for the next step. Rain was forecasted, so I covered the structure with a tarp. It was exciting to see the barn finally start to look like an actual building. Having kids on a farm isn't just nature and idle. There are dangers too. I didn't want any bright ideas about climbing onto the roof, so I removed the bridge. Now we had to return to the tool shed, which was full of tools, and rain and wind were on their way. As we prepared to fasten the trim, dark clouds came rolling in and I got a bad feeling.
No, I don't think that this is going to be fun. Just look at that, it's millions of them. Now that probably takes care of the ants on the roof, but that also means that we need to take a break.
We had bought a new fridge because the old one had started leaking water everywhere. This was supposed to be a quick and simple job, but as you might expect, it wasn't.
Let's just say it's a good thing that this wasn't a new fridge. And I don't think we will get any jobs as moving agents. I am not too sad about this because we are going to the dump.
While we were busy demolishing the old fridge, the weather cleared up again and we were able to continue work on the shed.
So we are finished with the back side of the house now, and that means that it's finally time to do the front. And this is the side that I've been looking most forward to, because this is the side that we see every day.
September started with our old Opel Astra. This car had been a cornerstone on our farm so far. We had hauled trash, picked up tools, feed and materials. And since we had a newer car as well, we weren't afraid to get this one dirty. We had even bought pigs with it. Now that it was due for its biannual road inspection, I wanted to make it as presentable as possible before taking it in. When I changed the muffler earlier this year, I noticed significant rust underneath, and I wanted to deal with that. I started by pressure washing the car. While it dried, I changed the diesel filter. Then I treated the rusty areas with a rust stopper and applied a thick tar-like coating to protect them from road salt. I also changed the oil. The air filter looked fine, but since we already had a new one, I replaced it. I was confident that this car would pass the inspection. If I only known then what I know now. The tool shed itself was technically finished, but it was never my intention to have a dirt floor or entrance. I needed to be able to drive equipment inside. The plan was to lay a gravel base, just like we had done when we built the road. First, the dirt had to be removed. After some time with a shovel, I remembered that I had a digger attachment for the tractor. The swing cylinder was leaking badly, but I hoped it would hold for a small job. Then the hydraulic line for the bucket cylinder blew. That meant we couldn't use it at all. Since it was already mounted, I parked it near the house to work on it. I only intended to extend the boom to stabilize it, and then another line blew. Sometimes I imagine how nice it would be to have brand new, reliable equipment that's always ready to perform. But you don't get rich as a small-scale farmer. Dealing with old and broken machinery is something we have to accept. The soil in front of the shed was like pudding. It couldn't support the gravel layer. At the time, I didn't realize how bad the ground conditions really were, but we had other tasks to attend to, so I left it to settle.
It's early morning and it's late September and something exciting is about to happen. Our sheep flock of 7 is about to be 8 because our new ram is coming today. But before that happens, we have a little job to do. The lambs from last year we think is a bit too small to be with the ram this year, and so that means that we need to separate them before the ram arrives.
With Knut gone, we had to buy another one. When the new ram arrived, he was magnificent. Still a lamb, the same age as ours, but strong and promising. A few days later, the builders returned. I was genuinely excited. By the end of this day, the barn would reach its original height for the first time in 100 years. It would no longer just be a stone ruin. It would finally become the barn from our dreams. The next morning we started incredibly early. The goal was clear, finishing laying the wooden under roof. It was a very long day, and having just recovered from the flu, pushing myself like that wasn't wise. As the calendar turned to October, I got sick again.
Welcome to my office.
Building a farm isn't just outdoor work, it's permits, approvals and bookkeeping, and for us, making videos on top of it. The office is where I spend a lot of time, but it was a sad and dirty place, and working there wasn't pleasant. Since I needed lighter work while recovering, I decided it was time to upgrade the office. The first step was improving the internet speed. The thick wooden walls of our old farmhouse completely strangled the Wi-Fi signal, so we installed a cable. The speed increased 100-fold. Not bad.
Now next on our list is this window. Let's face it, it's ugly.
Charging camera equipment had been a nightmare with the cable piles on the floor. We built a charging station to streamline the workflow. I also installed a new work light and replaced the 15-year-old monitors. The difference was enormous. Working here now is not only a joy, it's far more efficient. As my condition improved, I returned to the muddy mess outside the tool shed. Water was pushing up from a clogged underground drain. Before we could continue, we needed to relieve the pressure.
I think I'm going to be sore tomorrow.
At the same time, we had another urgent issue. The roof on the barn wasn't waterproof, and it was never meant to be. The goal had been to protect the building before winter, but that started to feel unlikely. We were promised a few dry days, so we worked as fast as we could. Rain was coming. This time I covered the roof with a tarp to prevent further water damage. Another job was coming up with a deadline. I needed the tool shed ready, so we had to finish the foundation. I had planned to build a stone base all around the shed, but I didn't have enough rocks, so I had to find another solution. The building was finally finished, just in time. The gravel floor was good, but I needed something smoother for the next job. Now we could finally start the next project. The Opel Astra did not pass the inspection. Fixing the car at the shop would have cost more than we had. That left us with two options, fixing it ourselves or scrap it. This car meant a lot to us. It had been our family car, hauled materials and carried countless of loads to the recycling center. Whenever we needed it, it delivered, and we didn't have a replacement. So we chose to fix it ourselves. I wasn't someone who could just look at a car and instantly know what was wrong, but this is a skill that I wanted to have. On a farm like ours, we can't afford to pay someone every time something breaks. And yes, I know this is not a pickup truck, but those are incredibly expensive in Norway, and this is what we could afford. As I tried to drive the car into the shed, I discovered another problem. It didn't fit. The door was too narrow. There was only one thing to do. The list of faults were long. All brakes were bad. The brake fluid needed replacing, one fog light didn't work, and the headlights were set too high. But the worst issue, the one that really would test me, was the front subframe. It was completely rotten and needed replacing. I eventually managed to get a rotten subframe out of the car, but not without discovering even more problems along the way. The rear end of the diesel particulate filter was completely gone, eaten away by rust. I decided to do the brakes before fitting the new subframe, since everything was easier to access while the car was already torn apart. But every time I removed another part, I found the same thing: more rot. It started to feel like I was sitting in a hole, and the more I tried to dig my way out, the deeper it became. By this point, we had already spent a lot of money on parts. Fixing everything properly would cost us far more than the car was actually worth, and walking away from it would cost us even more. And this wasn't just any car, it was the vehicle we used to haul trash to the dump, to move materials, to keep the farm running. With it out of commission, everything started piling up around us. As winter closed in and the light disappeared, it was clear that this problem wasn't going away. If this car didn't run again, it would follow us straight into 2026. The barn still needed a roof, and roofing in the winter is neither safe nor enjoyable. My crippling fear of heights was still very much an issue. Letting this beautiful handcrafted timber frame take damage was not an option. That meant it was only one thing to do. I had to get back up on that roof. One morning, I woke up to a scene I had been dreading. The temperatures had dropped overnight, and everything was covered in ice, including the barn roof. In moments like that, I sometimes catch myself thinking, was sitting at a desk in a warm office really that bad? But the answer is always the same. Watching life pass you by from behind a desk was never an option for us. This is the life we chose. This is the life we dreamed about, and yes, it is hard at times. But it is also a dream worth pursuing. The barn is a cornerstone of that dream. So, back up on the roof I go.
So the rain is just around the corner. I can feel the first droplets, and that means we are wrapping up.
December is the month of Christmas, so of course we decorated the farm. A few days later, the snow was gone again.
The calendar is now showing December, and since the sheep's mating season is somewhere between late October and early November, it should now be safe to reunite the lambs with their parent.
The reunion went fine, all the mothers accepted the lambs back into the flock. Now we can only hope that our gamble doesn't backfire with unexpected lambs next year. A few days later, a severe storm hit the farm, with strong winds and heavy rain. The storm had also shredded part of the barn roof membrane, and water was seeping inside. That was not good at all. After inspecting the damage, we realized that the new ram was missing. Normally we put bells on our sheep so that we can find them if they escape. With everything else going on, we hadn't gotten around to it. Several people searched, but we couldn't find him. I was not going to repeat that mistake again. The lambs all got bells. After weeks of searching, my son finally found the ram, but not in the way that we had hoped. He hadn't escaped. He had been on the farm the entire time, trapped in a trench. Moments like that are hard to process. Why did it happen? Could it have been prevented? The answer is yes. It could have been prevented if we had backfilled the trench. That thought alone is enough to break most people. But either way, we let this mistake break us, or we keep on moving forward. This dream, this lifestyle has a price. Sometimes it feels almost too high to pay. There is a service you're supposed to call, but the animal can lie there for days. I know, because we used it last year. Since this ram didn't die from any disease, giving him a proper and dignified burial together with my son felt right. This isn't the ending we were hoping for, but this is life on a farm. Thank you so much to everyone that has followed us this year. If you want to see the first half of the year, you can watch this next. Thank you for watching.